Hi everyone, my name is Sudip. Welcome to Technical Kida. We are starting a brand new journey to learn mobile repairing step by step, from beginner to advanced.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We rely heavily on these devices for literally everything, right? From calling our family to managing our work. When a phone breaks, that vital connection just shatters along with it. We all know that instant, sinking feeling, that sheer panic when your daily driver hits the pavement. Now, the immediate thought is usually to rush to some expensive repair shop. But the DIY repair movement, it is growing incredibly fast, and for really good reason. So, the absolute crucial question we're exploring today is, what does it actually take to fix it yourself? And how can you turn that vital skill into a professional pathway? So, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the repair workspace. Then, essential DIY repair tools. Third, decoding the motherboard. 4, key hardware components. And finally, number 5, winning the customer. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the repair workspace, laying the groundwork for success.
Look, before you even think about unscrewing a phone, you absolutely must conquer your physical environment. This is where the highly effective 5S methodology comes into play. It actually originates from lean manufacturing, and these 5 steps, sort, arrange, clean, set a standard, and sustain, they are going to be your absolute best friends. By sorting out unneeded tools, arranging a specific place for literally everything, and rigorously cleaning, you keep those incredibly delicate phone parts totally safe from hazardous conditions. As our sources highlight, this isn't just about being a little tidy. It's a fundamental habit that genuinely ensures your survival in the repair business.
Moving right along to Section 2, essential DIY repair tools, curating your budget kit.
So, now that our workspace is primed and ready, we need the right gear. Let's talk about an absolute essential for any DIY budget kit, the anti-static grounding mat. This thing is a lifesaver. It literally prevents static electricity from your hands from completely frying a motherboard. Now, compare that to a much more professional, regulated DC power supply. That's what advanced technicians use to boot up phones without a battery for complex diagnostics. Honestly, as a beginner, you don't need that heavy machinery just yet. A simple magnetic screw mat, a few plastic pry tools, some precision screwdrivers, and your anti-static gear are perfectly sufficient to get started.
But what exactly are you going to be opening with those tools? Well, that really depends on the phone. Android repairs often involve these simpler snap-fit plastic designs, meaning your basic plastic pry tools are going to work absolute wonders. iPhones, on the other hand, a whole different ballgame. They require a very specific pentalobe screwdriver just to get past those bottom screws, and they heavily utilize super strong adhesives and incredibly delicate internal connectors. Knowing these ecosystem differences dictates exactly which tools you're pulling from your kit.
You know, just as important as what to buy is what not to buy. When you're just starting out, remember this: safety always beats speed. You have got to avoid using dangerous items like sharp metal blades or cheap metal pry tools. Seriously, one slip with a metal blade, and you can scratch the device's frame, sever a delicate ribbon cable, or just completely short-circuit the entire board. Stick to the plastic opening tools, and maybe grab a basic hairdryer instead of one of those high-powered industrial heat guns.
All right, Section 3, decoding the motherboard, understanding surface-mounted devices, or SMDs.
Now, what's really interesting here is we're zooming all the way down into the micro world of the motherboard to look closely at SMDs. These are tiny components soldered directly onto the board itself. Let's identify the cast of characters, starting with the resistor. Visually, you can actually spot it by its black center and silver soldered edges. Its job is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It resists voltage from the power supply, and that's measured in ohms. But here's a pretty surprising fact from our sources. Despite how important it is, the resistor is actually the least likely component to fail on the entire motherboard. Crazy, right?
Now, contrast that with the capacitor. You usually find these fixed right opposite to the resistors, and they're typically light brown or yellow in color. Measured in farads, a capacitor acts like a tiny little energy filter, storing and discharging current to keep the flow nice and smooth. But unlike our trusty, reliable resistor, the capacitor is the most frequent culprit behind motherboard faults, for sure. If a board is failing, this is almost always the very first place professional technicians look. Next up, we have the inductor, which is also known as a coil. You can identify these by looking for white or ash-colored microcomponents, particularly located near the lighting integrated circuits on the board. These are measured in henries, and they have the really fascinating job of storing electrical energy in the form of magnetic energy. It's like a tiny little electromagnet right there on your phone's board.
Finally, managing all of this power are the integrated circuits, or ICs. And man, phone technology has heavily evolved here.
Older phones used what we call pin ICs, where you could visibly see the connection pins sticking out on the outside. But today, 90% of modern smartphones use ball ICs. These are incredibly compact, literally hiding all their connections internally as tiny little solder balls underneath the chip. Replacing these bad boys definitely requires some advanced microsoldering skills.
Moving on to Section 4, Key Hardware Components, the plug-and-play modules.
So, if ball ICs require advanced microsoldering, what exactly can a beginner tackle? Well, let's zoom back out to the plug-and-play elements. Right at the top of that list is the smartphone battery. Because lithium-ion batteries naturally degrade over a few years, a battery replacement is actually one of the most common, high-demand, and accessible DIY repairs out there. Armed with just your suction cup, a few plastic pry tools, and a precision screwdriver, you can absolutely confidently handle this and breathe totally new life into a dying device.
And you know the exact same goes for the camera module. If a camera lens cracks or the sensor fails, replacing it is entirely possible without needing a fancy microscope or a soldering iron. It's simply a modular unit connected by a really delicate ribbon cable. Once you gently disconnect that cable using your anti-static tweezers, you just swap the old module out for a new one. It's basically plug and play.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Winning the Customer, the human element of repair.
Okay, so you've organized your desk, you've curated your toolkit, and you understand the hardware. But listen, fixing the hardware is only half the job if you genuinely want to turn this DIY hobby into a professional side hustle. Think back to our story of Ravi from the very beginning. When his phone breaks, he isn't just mildly inconvenienced. The guy is highly stressed. He's worried about the cost, about losing his work contacts, and especially about missing that promise of ice cream with his daughter. Our source material heavily emphasizes that the customer is king. When a stressed-out customer hands over their precious device, treating them like a welcomed, honored guest is literally the ultimate secret to your business's survival and growth. Just as we had those 5S steps for our physical workspace earlier, we also have a structured 4-step process for interpersonal success. First, warmly welcome the customer. Greet them like a guest in your own home. Second, bring them to a comfort zone. Offer them a seat, maybe a glass of water, and just acknowledge their stress. Third, create confidence by listening really carefully to their issue. And fourth, make the customer feel important by giving them your complete, undivided attention. It is honestly amazing how much your body language dictates the entire interaction. Maintaining steady eye contact, having a calm face, and keeping a straight posture, that immediately builds trust. And here's a huge pro tip from our sources. Always adjust your communication style to match theirs. If they're speaking simply, you speak simply. Don't hide behind a wall of confusing technical jargon. By maintaining a calm demeanor and adjusting to their level, you immediately help relieve their mental stress.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final thought. Over time, taking apart a phone, identifying a faulty capacitor, or popping in a new battery, it all just becomes muscle memory. It becomes an entirely automatic. But combining that technical mastery with genuine empathy and great customer service, now that is the true mark of a professional. When you can fix the device and reassure the person who owns it, like helping a father get back to his day so he can actually keep his promise of getting ice cream with his daughter, that is when you've truly mastered the craft. So I have to ask, are you ready to take the leap from a DIY hobbyist to a professional technician? Thank you so much for exploring this with us today, and I really hope this sparks your curiosity to roll up your sleeves and start fixing.